I'm Carl King, and this is The Carl King Show, where every week we learn about music, filmmaking, and creativity. If you like this show, head over to patreon.com/carlking and join for just $1 or $5 per month. Or send a tip through PayPal or Venmo to username Carl Kingdom. Special thank you to my Illusionist $51 level patrons, Hank Howard III, Sean Motley, and Chewbode. Quick shout out to my music endorsements, Vienna Symphonic Library, Fractal Audio, Ernie Ball Strings, Tune Track, and Millennia Media. Now, let's get this episode beginned. Just a couple of Carl King the Human updates, and then we will officially get beginned. Number one, back in 2017, I made a Carl King album called Grand Architects of the Universe. Along with it, I released a 3-hour documentary about my creative process, from humming melodies to recording guitar and bass to orchestration to mixing the drums and working with the voice actors. At the end, it includes a 46-minute video performance of Travis Orban playing all of his drum parts, and also clips of Mike Keneally, Virgil Donati, Thomas Lang, and others doing their thing. Until now, it has only been available on Vimeo, but you can now watch the entire thing for free on my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/CarlKingdom. And number two, remember that Sir Millard Mulch How to Sell the Whole Effing Universe to Everybody Once and For All album? Well, did you know that there was a real printed 222-page book that went along with it? Imagine a warped business motivational course, or more like a psychedelic manifesto on salesmanship, creativity, and esoteric magic. It's a kooky thing, equal parts Tony Robbins and the Unabomber. And it's also got complete lyrics, liner notes, and photos from the making of the record. Last week, I fixed just a few typos and posted it as a downloadable, high-resolution PDF for $5 and up patrons inside my Patreon account. So head over there for an avalanche of angry, mystical gibberish. Okay, today we've got part 3 of my Chat with Chewbode, my longest-term friend and creative collaborator. If you haven't listened to part 1 or part 2, go back to episode 62, where we talk about becoming friends and growing up in the swamps of South Venice, Florida, and episode 64, where we talk about attending Venice High School and how education failed us. As a reminder, Chewbode has been involved in most everything I've made. He's contributed to all of my Carl King, Sir Millard Mulch, and Dr. Zoltan projects, as far back as designing the cassette J-card for my first demo tape, all the way through to story editing my latest animated pilot. In this multi-episode conversation, we tell the story of our 33-year friendship, from riding the school bus as teenagers to dressing up in business suits and selling a fake invention in New York City. This is the story of two smart, creative kids who met in the swamps of South Venice, Florida, and made plans to escape. Part 3 begins now. I ended up getting a gig as Sir Millard Mulch at this event called the New York Music and Internet Expo in 1999 in New York City.
Yep.
And to me, this South Venice loser kid was like, we're going to New York City. We got a gig.
We're making it big.
Yeah, like this is big time. We're going to be on the stage.
Oh yeah, we're all excited about it.
There's going to be like bright lights and stuff, and we're going to need real guitars, and still have no resources or any idea what we're doing.
Nothing. Yeah.
And so I was going to you, and you were kind of helping me organize this. And this show was kind of like this important conference happening at the time. It was sponsored by mp3.com. And Chuck D of Public Enemy was there giving a keynote. And it wasn't a very big event.
No, it was like, I think the first couple, like a year or two before it had started, maybe.
The internet is going to change the future of music. you need to get on board with the internet, blah, blah, blah.
I think it's important to understand really quickly is this is before the iPod, where Apple introduced the iPod in the early 2000s, and it changed everything. This is the build up to that.
Yeah, these are like some independent people getting together saying, "Hey, there's something big coming."
Yeah, and
you guys, this is what's going to happen.
And MP3s were out there, like you could get quote unquote download them off the internet and all those kinds of things.
MP3.com.
Exactly, and there was all these disparate companies making MP3 players, and some of them were terrible, some of them were great, and it was always, our player holds 1,000 songs. Well, our holds 2,500 songs. And that's the big battle that was going on at the time. So these guys were basically projecting down the road to say, here's where this is going.
Yeah. Sir Millard Mulch was one of the bands that played at this conference, which is really strange to think about.
Yeah.
I don't even know how we ended up getting booked into this thing. Like it's possible I was just on a mailing list and they said, hey, we need some bands to play in New York City. And I was like, I'll play in New York City. You and I and a few artist friends, we kind of put our money together. Not my money because I had no money, but like you and some others pitched in and paid for us to go to drive to New York City with a U-Haul.
Yeah.
And we just like threw everything we could at getting attention.
Do you remember how long that buildup was? From the inception of saying, yes, we're going to do this, I don't know, I guess probably the time you signed the paperwork till the time we left, was this just a couple months of planning?
It was about 6 months.
Okay, it seemed less than that to me, but...
And we planned this huge multimedia show where you were going to have all this 3D rendering going on. Our other artists were going to build masks for all the band members to wear.
Plus,
it was
there
like
was
this
merch booth type of combination.
Big production, but it ended up being just a shoestring thing because we just couldn't get it together.
Yeah.
And we rented a U-Haul, and my parents thought we were crazy. Like, what are you doing? Getting this U-Haul on the back of Devin's van, and you're going to drive to New York? What are you? Don't do that.
Yeah.
It's raining. Don't go out don't drive in the rain. What are you doing? And we drove all the way to New York City.
Do you even know what
Florida.
you're doing up there?
Yeah. You're going to get killed. What are you doing? Don't leave Venice. What? And so we loaded up this U-Haul full of just all of this crazy stuff.
All meant for the booth.
All for the booth and the show and stuff like that.
Yeah,
like
equipment. Yeah.
Big robots and stuff, like fake robot costumes. And we set up a booth. It happened to be right next to CD Baby, Derek Sivers. CD Baby had been around for like a year.
Yeah.
So he had been around for the almost exact same amount of time as Ed Furniture.
Yeah.
So we were both these little startups.
Yeah. And he was getting pretty well known at that point, too.
Well, he was still pretty small, though, at the time.
But people were hearing about it. Like, it wasn't I had heard when we got there, and I was like, oh, I know CD Baby.
Yeah, well, he was the only person that was able to sell your CD online.
Yeah,
he was like the first person who did it.
Yeah.
I remember we were so obnoxious. This stands out to me. We were so annoying and loud. We had guitar amps with mics plugged into them. We were screaming through them. We had robotic arms reaching out and grabbing people. We had flashing lights. We had TV screens blasting weird homemade footage, sci-fi movies and stuff.
Yeah.
And it was just this horror show of like, what are these people doing? This is this monstrosity of a booth.
Yeah. Almost pretty much accosting people that walked by.
Yeah. Like reaching out and grabbing their purses with robot arms and stuff, like dragging them in. Derek came up to us because his girlfriend at the time, who was working with him at the booth, was hysterically crying.
Yeah, we broke her.
She was so upset.
We didn't mean to.
Yeah. We annoyed her so much that Derek had to come over and be like, guys, I'm sorry, but I like what you guys are doing and everything. It's pretty cool, but my girlfriend is really upset. Like she's over there crying.
Yeah.
And we had to stop, knock it off.
That's
pretty cool to think. Too bad we upset someone.
Yeah, right.
But pretty cool that we upset Derek Sivers' girlfriend.
And the funny thing,
and tell us to knock it off.
In the moment, the funny note that I remember is, it's not like a scenario where there's a party going on down the street and you hear the loud people like in the party and you're like, I got to go down there because my baby's sleeping. Whatever the excuse is. Knock on the door. Hey, can you quiet it down, guys? And then it happens again later. You got to go over there an hour later, because inevitably the music ramped back up again. Hey man, can you? It's not like that. It's not like where Derek had come over. It's like the fourth time. He's like, oh, you guys are going to be in. It was, we had taken it from 0 to 11 instantly. So bad that we just rifled this cacophony into this poor woman's head and just, you know, she was destroyed over it. And we all felt really bad about it. But it was, that was my like takeaway, was like, whoa, that went way off the rails really quickly. Although it didn't feel like we were doing anything really too.
We're just trying to get attention.
It was
being
performance artist kind of stuff.
But the other element to this is a technology convention where people are trying to market technology and marketing materials and brochures, and these are minimal table booths.
Yeah, these big companies had booths there.
Yeah, and we had like a 12-foot tall thing with a mannequin on top with, you know...
It was painted orange.
Yeah.
It was really stand out.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
And people would come up and be like, what is that? What are you doing? What do you guys do?
Yeah.
Can you even explain to me what you do?
Yeah.
We started joking and saying, we booked a space in a cheese convention and we ended up in the wrong show.
I remember that.
Sir Millard Mulch ended up playing, and like 12 people were there in the main hall.
Didn't get a huge bang for your buck.
No, it was we met a couple of nice people, and they thought we were funny, and we made a couple of weird, intense fans.
Definitely one of those situations where the experience as a whole was a lot of value to us. We just didn't really sell a lot of merch or have
we probably sold a CD.
But it was like that. You could take that whole experience and put it in your back pocket and learn from it, you know, a bunch of different angles.
And I wasn't sure what we had done, but somehow it felt interesting that we had upset some people and that we confused some people. And that was the first time we were like, oh, that's interesting. We confused some people. That's an interesting feeling.
Yep.
Like, what does that mean? Maybe we should do more of that, because that was... And it's another one of those, you're stumbling into a sensation.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what I just did, but I liked that for some reason.
Yeah.
The following year, we decided to return to the New York Music and Internet Expo.
Yeah, a little bit different this time.
A little bit different. This is one of the major collaborations between me and Chewbode. And I have no idea what got us on this mindset, but we were at your apartment one night sitting in front of the computers, and we were like, should we go back to this expo again this year? Or what should we do this year? You know, the previous year was all about MP3s changing the music industry. And we ended up kind of talking about, you know, well, if MP3s can be downloaded for free, what if they end up destroying the music industry? And we were kind of like, what if we were to create a device that was better than MP3 at destroying the music industry?
Right.
Like, we're the next level of MP3s. You won't believe what we've got coming.
Yeah.
And what if we go there and market it as a file format / machine,
right,
that can compress files even faster than an MP3 compressor can, which makes no sense logically.
Right.
Like, we claimed we can compress them up to 320 times faster.
Yeah. And
you can listen to them faster or something like that. It was like a confusion between time compression and data compression.
But it sounded just technical enough where if you were careful, like people could skim over that and they'd believe it.
And I was like, do you think we could make a machine like that? Like, what would that look like? You turned and popped open Lightwave, the 3D modeling.
Yep.
And you designed this thing called D.E.M.I, D-E-M-I, which at the time I think we called Device for the Elimination of the Music Industry.
Yeah.
Which I then tried to later change to Device to End the Music Industry. So you created this 3D object, which was a machine, and then you created a sort of diagram schematic transparency of it so that you could see all of the parts inside of it.
Yep.
This is the small matter inductor. This is the large matter inductor.
Completely ridiculous. Yeah.
And you were using all of these terms.
The low gain antenna versus the high gain antenna.
Yes.
Stuff like that.
Yeah. Why does it need a low gain and a high gain antenna? It was kind of like, what is this thing?
That was the questionable thing about the device.
And we were like, what if we take this thing and pretend it's real and try to sell it at a technology convention and market it? See if we can con people into being, not actually trying to sell it or take people's money, but what if we go as a prank?
Go right up to the edge.
Yeah.
And create it in such a way and market it in such a way that there's this blurry line, like, yeah, we know this isn't the final look of it, but it's going to be very close. And these are pretty kind of primitive. So we were able to talk our way through our inadequacies of being able to do it super like, you can't compete with someone like Sony who's millions of dollars and puts a brochure out. If you're going to build a brochure, it's not going to look that good, right? Because we're just a bunch of guys with not a lot of money.
Yeah.
And so we talk our way around that by saying, oh, this is just the prototype, you know, but it's going to look a certain way when it's done.
Yeah, this 3D rendering doesn't really do it justice.
Yeah.
But there's only one device right now, and we only have it. We have it on the Salt Flats in
it's like
where was it, in Utah or something?
Utah on the Salt Flats, we're testing it or something.
We're testing it out there.
I don't even know if the Salt Flats,
it's really dangerous.
Yeah,
you know. That's where the brilliance of Chewbode came out, in basically lying to people all day. And with a totally straight face, lying to everyone he talked to all day in a business suit.
You make me sound so bad.
We're all wearing business suits. We're sitting behind this desk with a bunch of brochures for a fake machine / file thing. And we came up with these absurd ideas about it. And Chewbode had incredible mechanical explanations about how all of the parts of the machine worked and how the algorithms worked in compressing the files, which is kind of like Silicon Valley, the premise of the and
many years before.
Yeah. I was once again, this was like part 2 of this is the guy that I saw on the school bus.
Yeah.
Talking about this software that he's designing, which was a legit thing.
Yeah, that was absolutely a real thing. Like, we're really going to do that.
But he blew me away again, like all these years later, seeing how deeply he can talk about mechanical parts and all of these schematics and explaining a machine to someone that doesn't, a thing that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And New York Times reporters coming up to us and asking us questions.
For real stuff. Like they were buying it hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah. And like these investors came up to us who were like, we have we have these funds in Japan and we're interested in this technology.
Absolutely.
How soon will it be ready?
These guys were super pro. Like this was real stuff happening in front of us.
And Chewbode is just lying to them straight out and taking their business card. And I'm over there dying laughing, and I can't let them see me laughing. And I was trying to record it on a little micro cassette.
Yeah. Because he just keeps going.
Chewbode is a really, in public, he's a very reserved person. But he went into performance mode that day.
Somehow.
And I was like, where is this coming from? I can't believe this is happening in front of my eyes. So can you talk a bit about what this whole thing was? What was your experience with this?
Well, I'll do a quick lead up to it. So, you know, again, the concept of microcosms are going to come up here for a second. And that is yet another thing that kind of is a natural progression off me enjoying doing graphics and stuff for those video games all those years ago, is in my appreciation for movies and special effects and visual effects and all that kind of stuff, and me mentally kind of hoping that we'll be the ILM someday or whatever, you know, all these little pieces. I know how to use a computer. I appreciate things like visual effects for movies. I'm going to try to learn 3D animation software. And I picked up a copy of, at the time, a program called Lightwave 3D by a company called NewTek. I found out that like that was a piece of software that they were using like for certain things in Jurassic Park and stuff. And it was really an industry standard. It had been around for a long time, but I didn't know much about it when I stumbled across it. And I learned it pretty well, but I learned it from a mechanical perspective. Like I couldn't create creatures or people or I wasn't really good at like smooth animation of people walking or something. It was just clunky, and my brain can't wrap itself around the organic side of things very well. But you asked me to do a logo or a building or some mechanical thing, I can do it pretty well.
Which you went on to do the maximum volumizer, the H2O2 phone, and the three-legged wheelchair, or one-legged wheelchair.
One-legged, no-seated wheelchair or something, or whatever.
In the Sir Millard Mulch How to Sell album, those weird products.
Yeah. I really enjoyed working with the software in general, just like as an aside, like not part of any of Carl's projects or any of our other friends. It was just like, this was just something I was interested in doing on the side. And I enjoyed it because it was kind of like this snow globe, this microcosm where I had the complete control of creating the sun, the moon, the earth, and everything in between. And I could control it all. All I had to put into it was time. And if I wanted to get really involved, I could take real world objects and measure them and sketch them on a piece of paper with all these measurements and say, I can now create that in the real world or in the digital world, even though it's sitting right next to me. It's going to be in this little computer screen and I can manipulate it and render it out and all this kind of stuff. So that was the basis of it, right? So I was pretty proficient at a lot of that at that point. So when the subject of D.E.M.I had kind of come up, it was just another tool I just turned to, and it was no different than, plugging a microphone into a recorder and hitting record, and it's all of a sudden now you're recording a podcast or whatever, right? It was a very simple, easy thing to do for me. And so, boom, I start working on this, and I start churning it out. A lot of the concept of what it was kind of based off of, again, this seed of like, this is an effortless, ridiculous thing I'm going to throw out there. It's got to have like giant legs on the bottom and the whole device can squat down. What? That makes no damn sense. Like, it's ridiculous.
With a big diamond drill bit on the bottom.
Yeah, it's like this big, like a 6 foot tall drill bit. Like, what?
for breaking up the files.
Yeah.
To the WAV files, to like break them up and compress them.
Absolute double talk, stupid, like makes no sense. But you
would seamlessly move between saying it was a device to saying it was a file
or file format.
Yeah, a file format.
Yeah, exactly.
It was software and hardware.
Yeah.
In the same way that light is a particle and a wave.
Yeah. And you couldn't get the benefits of this technology without doing both. Yeah. And so that was always the selling point. Like, you have to, this is our ecosystem. You're in our walled garden. You have to commit to both the concepts here.
And this is just a reminder. We took thousands of dollars and printed brochures, dressed up in business suits, and flew to New York City to a convention and tried to convince people that this was real. And everyone there believed it.
Yeah. So for me, at the very beginning, this was no different than like the How to Sell album. I'm just contributing some artwork. However, you quickly stepped back from it, and you're just like, yeah, Chewbode, do what you want to do to this, and just let me know, if you're getting to a point where you have to ask me about something. And I kind of just was like throwing stuff together, making this crazy device. And it occurred to me, like, we knew what we were getting into. So at this point, we knew we were going to go up there and we're going to try to fake sell this. And it was originally your idea to do this tri-fold brochure format. And you're like, well, I want this on the front. I want this on the back. The front's going to be a full color thing, and the inside's going to be some sort of description. And, let's see what we can do in this. And I said, well, why don't we go ahead and like create, render this out, but render it as a wireframe. So it's very akin to the concept of sometimes in modern day car commercials, you'll see they'll cut the car away so you can see how fast the engine is and the cool technology. And it was kind of akin to that concept.
See the air moving through it or whatever it's supposed to be doing.
Yeah, it was like, it was a wire grid, right? So it was meant to look very mechanical and very drafty, like you just, like a draftsman did it.
In my words, not knowing, I originally thought it was a blueprint.
Yeah, that was the concept. Yeah. It was trying to feel like a draftsman had done it, right? I'll be completely honest. Most of the words of labeling that stuff was stream of consciousness. I don't know where I pulled it from, but that was directly influenced by understanding how computers work at a physical level and taking things apart and building weird, like, laser projector things out of TV tubes and stuff like that, and just learning those innards of things. Growing up in the 80s and early 90s, there was also a lot of things like new advancements in like military aircraft. I thought that was really fascinating. At one time I was a kid, I wanted to be a fighter pilot. I thought that would be really cool. So I was kind of had a fascination for airplanes. I kind of knew things about like thrust and intakes, and that was just kind of part of my understanding of how certain things worked. So addressing those high performance, multi-billion-dollar aircraft parts names to something so ridiculous just felt natural. And it felt like the way we had to go. But it was very stream of consciousness. Like there was no predetermination of how all that stuff was going to go until it was on paper.
I'm looking at the brochure here. I have a copy of it on my iPad, and the front of it says, "Introducing a revolutionary new file compression format or standalone peripheral device, which will revolutionize," which is funny because we reuse the word, revolutionize the music industry by rendering the Microsoft Corporation and MP3 technology obsolete within 5 to 7 months.
Yeah, we threw down.
Then asterisk. And then it says underneath that, estimate based on current investment projections and data gathered via strategic internet research marketing. So anybody with a brain is going to look at that and be like, you guys are hilarious. This is ridiculous. But
not that day.
And then on the back, we had frequently asked questions. What does D.E.M.I stand for? Is the D.E.M.I compatible with Windows 2000? When will D.E.M.I be on the market? How can D.E.M.I be both a standalone peripheral device and a file compression format? What is a standalone peripheral device? Who is the optimum consumer demographic? Can the D.E.M.I import WMF files without the risk of a PostScript error? What is the D.E.M.I made of? What options will be available on the next model, assuming we purchase a downloadable upgrade? And then it says, how can I make an anonymous financial contribution? And then there's an arrow pointing to the next page, and you turn the page and there are no answers. And then there's just ridiculous quotes from various people from 1923 and newspaper clippings that were never existed. On the inside, let me bring up this schematic. We have a high-impact aluminum alloy hull, which is a dent-resistant skin. It allows D.E.M.I to flip onto side without damaging vital components.
Of course, you want that, right?
Yeah. It's got a swatter arm on the top.
It's like a fly swatter.
Which is a fly swatter. It's got a swatter vent. It's a heat sink that allows appropriate cooling of the swatter arm mechanism. It's got an ejector port, which outputs data, in quotes. It's got a power transfer vent and feeder, a convenient carrying handle, which you can never carry this thing.
Oh, it's like 7 feet tall.
Yeah. It's got chrome-plated diamond drill bit, gyroscopic stabilizer, ejector port ram shaft, an exhaust port, a small matter inductor feeder, a small matter inductor, a small matter inductor relief, a vertical stabilizer, a large matter inductor feeder, a high-gain telemetry antenna array. From a distance of up to 3 feet, will send and receive high-powered data signals
Bluetooth
to a remote control unit. It's got belts that move around inside it for some reason that aren't connected to anything. They just move around on various gears. The legs are incorrectly mounted to the body, basically. It's just a complete... It's ridiculous.
It's insane.
Yeah.
Yep. There's not much more to say other than it's just insane.
Funny anecdote about that, funny memory, is about halfway through the day, I was walking through the place. I didn't think anybody would believe us, but I saw no evidence that anyone didn't believe us.
Yeah, that's the scary part.
Like, I didn't see anybody see it as a joke.
You think we could have been good con men? Things turned out differently.
Devin Townsend's wife once said to me, when I told her about all this stuff, she said, do you ever consider doing something? You ever consider what good you could do to the world, for the world?
Nope.
And I kind of laughed, and she's like, why are you laughing? I am serious. Like, you could actually do something useful instead of all this stuff you're doing.
Oh, man. She just doesn't get it, Carl.
I know. About halfway through the day, I was trying to tell that story. About halfway through the day, I was walking around bewildered that no one had gotten the joke throughout half the day. And I was like, what does this mean about the world? What are we living in? What does this mean that we can actually do if we wanted to?
Yeah.
I ran into Derek, and he was there again.
Mm-hmm.
I ran into him and I said, have you seen this thing that we're doing over here? This is crazy. He's like, oh my God, yeah, I saw what you guys are doing. This is unbelievable. I said, yeah, we're selling a completely fake product and everybody thinks it's real. And he said, Millard, that's what everyone here is doing.
Yeah.
And it was really funny that
so good.
It was like, oh, he took it to another level.
Yeah. You know, when we were doing the presentation of this, if you will, and the Dog and Pony Show, trying to sell this ridiculous device and technology and the concept of this moving forward, you know, because parenthetically, destroying the music industry is really what we're selling, right? That's really the subtext of all this.
And it did get destroyed.
Well, yeah, not by us, but yeah. So the interesting thing about it was this switch that I kind of threw on. It was interesting because I kind of view that again as one of those creative outbursts that just kind of flow out of me. It was literally a scenario, I think, where I just took off my jacket and I loosened my tie and I started really just engaging people.
Is this was maybe the first time where those two complete different worlds of the totally logical Spock and your total insanity world merged, and you became the one Chewbode for like a couple days.
Yeah.
That's where the suit wearing guy and
all the technical jargon.
Yeah. That's interesting. I had never even considered that.
I have to say, you know, I'll be frank, I don't think that there's ever been any time where I've done any other type of performance art like that where I've purposely pushed myself in front.
Right. You're almost always behind the scenes.
Yeah. I think we've talked in the past about...
But you were so good.
Yeah.
Like you are world class when you were BSing people.
When I was in that moment, I knew it was working.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand how exactly it was working either. But I knew enough to how to continue that improv going properly. And the beauty of it, too, is when we were asked questions, we were all contributing. But I remember a couple times where you'd be like, you know, you'd turn and you'd be like, well, this is really the guy that has done a lot of the hardware design of this or whatever. And then I would just kick over and be like, well, yes, and this is exactly, you know, thanks, Millard, you know, but this is really blah, blah, blah. And I would just take it over. And to be honest with you, if you never really read the brochure and you really were only half listening to what we were pitching at the very beginning, it was feasible. I mean, it was something you would consider potentially investing in because we had that confidence and we were just getting to that point where we were selling it so well. And so, yeah, I mean, I'll say I patted myself on the back for that because I thought that was a pretty good stretch of my ability. I didn't think I could really do. And to be honest with you, it was probably the only time where I had zero inhibitions too, because typically projects we've worked on in the past where you or anyone else has come up with some sort of project and they're like, well, we're going to do this, this, and this, and we're going to go on stage and do this as a performance piece to whatever the project is. I'd be like, I hope to God he doesn't ask me because I just want to be the guy that sits in the back and runs the camera or records the thing or helps set up the prop. That's always been me. You know, I'm the behind the camera kind of guy. I don't want to be in front. So it's pretty rare jewel in the crown there, I guess, is what I'm saying. Don't expect it again, I guess, is my point.
Another major project that you and I collaborated on was the Sir Millard Mulch fake Ibanez instructional DVDs. That project came together really fast.
Yeah.
I think it was one of those whims where I dragged you into something and said, we should make a fake instructional, like I'll pretend that, because I had been already for a few years trying to come up with a way to be an actual Ibanez artist.
Have them as a sponsor. Yeah.
And I couldn't quite get through to them or get them on board, and they wouldn't reply to me. And I thought that clinics are really the way to go with this stuff for my thing. And I wanted them to get involved with it.
And I think that was big at the time in general.
Yeah. I was obsessively going to clinics and watching instructional videos. And I was like, I know this format very well, instructional videos, which is funny considering where I ended up. And I said, we should do one for Sir Millard Mulch. And I'll pull in all of this weird reference stuff that I know from watching so many instructional DVDs or whatever. You were the video guy, basically. You knew some stuff about video. And I don't know that you had really done much video, but you knew a lot. And I think you had a camera.
And some of that was just because of my interest in the movie industry. I'd learned kind of some of the behind the scenes, how they do certain things.
Yeah,
you and really hadn't flexed it at all.
You and I would watch a lot of movies, and you were seeing them in a cinematography level that I could not conceive of.
Yeah.
You were talking about lighting and lenses, and I was like, man, that's amazing that you can see any of that.
Yeah.
I don't even see
Especially since the majority of that was, again, before the internet. So you only learn that stuff when you get magazines from the local bookstore.
But you were watching a lot of like making of stuff and bonus content.
When you could find it.
We'd watch that stuff when we were at your place.
Right.
We got to do this. Let's make a funny Ibanez parody video, basically.
But the goal was to make it polished.
Yeah.
Like we wanted to make it seem very real. Yeah.
And we went over to Troll Music. And I think we did all of this in like one day. Just planned it, did it. I maybe wrote the script the night before or something.
I think it was like that. I think it was like one day we talked about it, and and the next day we were actually shooting. It was like really fast.
So we went to Troll Music and we rented these huge burning hot stage lights.
Yeah.
That you would have at a big concert.
Like the gel lights.
Yeah. And we brought them into my bedroom, basically in the back of my mom's house. And it was so hot in there because it was the Florida summer, and we're filming with not only your hot lights, these tungsten lights, but also these giant stage lights burning me
And we couldn't have the AC running because it would have been picked up on the audio.
However, we did have the AC running because then we redid all the audio.
Oh, you did make that. I forgot. Yeah,
all of every bit of audio in all of those, except for video number 10, is completely recorded in post.
It's all ADR.
All of the bass playing, all of the talking was overdubbed.
Which, yeah, you're right. I'm sorry. I do remember at one point you were just like, we're just going to replace it. And I was like, oh, yeah, we could do that. And we'd never done that before, so we had no idea how good it was going to be. But
that project ended up being really relatively successful in getting attention for Sir Millard Mulch because it was the early days of YouTube. And I think I loaded those suckers up with keywords. Yeah. And I added Sleepy Time Gorilla Museum and all of this stuff because
whatever was remotely mentioned.
I was wearing a Sleepy Time shirt.
Yeah.
So I added them in there. So tons of people looking for Sleepy Time Gorilla Museum. That was the only video that came up on YouTube. And this was like very beginning of YouTube.
Yeah.
I think that we originally had it on, it was called Google Video. And then
might have been.
Or something like that. And then it kind of merged with YouTube.
Yeah.
And then I remember you and I were really struggling because the video files were too big.
Yeah.
And we were like struggling to make them small enough.
We were having trouble with,
couldn't upload that much data.
And we were having trouble with like the audio like being out of sync once the it was uploaded and stuff.
Yeah, because it was really buggy. It was like almost like beta.
Yeah.
You know, at that level of what YouTube was doing, I think.
It was upload it, get a little bit of metadata, you're done. That's all you could do. There's no online editing like there is now and promotional stuff, and none of that existed.
This was originally a DVD.
Yes.
That we would burn one at a time, and I would stick labels on them, and I would ship them out included with the Sir Millard Mulch How to Sell book.
Yep.
So if you buy the book, you also get a surprise instructional DVD. And then we got them onto YouTube somehow, and it kind of blew up. And a lot of people still remember those goofy videos.
Yeah.
Like Misha Mansour of Periphery, who you probably have no idea who that is.
I don't.
But that guy was a fan of the Sir Millard Mulch videos, which is kind of funny because this guy is like a huge music industry guy now.
Yeah, we got a lot of comments on them, and it was pretty crazy.
It went really well. Do you have any thoughts on that? What do you have to say about all that?
You know, that was... that was par for the course, I think. I don't remember the exact time frame that we did the Ibanez instructional videos, but I thought it was a lot of fun because at that point, that was a new thing we had not really been doing. I felt there was some sort of extra amount of collaboration I felt I was bringing to the table because of some extra knowledge I had, which, you know, maybe in the grand scheme of things, like... Whenever we do something, it was largely you coming to me and saying, Chewbode, let's do this. I got this idea, right? And so I always kind of feel like there's like a, 60 to 80 or, so percent of the guts of the thing is your project, and I'm contributing to it and helping you out and doing stuff. And it's just kind of, it doesn't bother me that it's that way. That's just kind of how my involvement feels, right? It's not a 50-50 or me being even more than 50%. It's a contribution, a collaboration in that sense. And this really felt like one of those times where I felt like, I think I'm doing like 55% of the, not work, but like, because obviously you were dying in those lights, but...
Well, it was clearly I was not in that world. I knew nothing about video. And you made that thing possible by making all that video stuff.
And so, I felt like I brought that to the table, and I was like, oh, cool, I've got these extra skills, which were in their infancy, of course. It was really kind of the first thing I'd ever really done, too. And it felt really good to do that. And it felt really good that we could do it so quickly. And, I didn't do really any writing as part of that, or a lot of the mechanics, in air quotes of...
Well, it's also funny. It was just you and I in a room.
Yeah.
Like a lot of times an instructional production, they would have a crew of a dozen people doing something like that. So it was funny that we were able to bust something like that out.
And we had quality. And we had the wherewithal to say, well, we need some gel lights. We need a black curtain backdrop. And you had brought out some equipment to put in the background. So we'd have something interesting other than you to look at. We had different camera angles, so we could have a neck shot. We could have a wide and all that kind of stuff. And and it was absolute. The funny part too was it was a trick, it was a goof, but the circumstances by which we're creating it is an absolute ridiculous thing too. I mean, when we're shooting this video, at one point, Carl's half passed out. The heat is ridiculous. I'm constantly having to go and like literally wipe his forehead with sweat before the next shot occurs and all this kind of stuff. And at one point, like, he's half passed out, and we have to get like a bucket of water to put his feet in. He's wearing I think it was like a suit jacket and a t-shirt, right? Or
it was a long sleeve shirt.
And so it was just
sorry, I had a ton of makeup on my face, and I was wearing a sleepy time shirt. I was talking way in the background. I was losing my mind.
Yeah, there was a whole bunch of things like I didn't want you to sweat because that's like, oh god, we got to redo all the makeup, and that's, you know, it's going to take a little bit of time. So we wanted to get through this as quickly as possible so you didn't die under those lights, which was so. You did a huge amount of, like, you fell on your sword for that project for sure. But I felt really good about it because even though that's a huge contribution of what you did in front of the camera, I was able to bring some of that to fruition with my basic knowledge of shooting and stuff.
And then we took it to another level.
It went a little bit further. Yeah.
We moved on to, we decided, let's make a mockumentary about Sir Millard Mulch, about the real guy who is behind Sir Millard Mulch, named Paul K. Mavanu, and which is a fake real name, because I wanted to protect my real name, Carl King, because I was still living in two kind of worlds. I was working in advertising, graphic design stuff, and I didn't want the two worlds polluting each other. Like, I didn't want my boss finding out that I was doing this wacky stuff on the side.
Yeah.
And the opposite. You know, I didn't want, in music, it's like, I have to be cool. I can't have an actual real job.
Yeah.
I was separating those things. So I made up the fake real name, Paul K. Mavanu. And this was a documentary about the fake me.
Yeah.
And that's the end of part 3 of my chat with Chewbode. In part 4, we'll talk about what the heck happened with that never-released Sir Millard Mulch documentary. Okay, that's the end of this episode of The Carl King Show. Remember to subscribe on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, or anywhere else you consume these dang episodes. And if you like this show, support the creation of more episodes by joining my Patreon for just $1 or $5 a month. That's patreon.com/Carl King. Or send a tip through PayPal or Venmo to username Carl Kingdom. Special thank you to my $51 a month patrons at the special illusionist level, Chewbode, Sean Motley, and Hank Howard III. And thank you to all of the very good friends of Carl King for joining me. And as Chewbode always says, hello, Mr. King.